Quería agradecerles por venir, contarles así rapidito que somos una organización, una asociación sin fines de lucro que se llama Cannabis Gotas de Esperanza. Estamos inscritos en registros públicos que busca dar esperanza, empoderar a los pacientes y a su entorno, dar información, educar a la sociedad civil, a los doctores, tratar de influir en las leyes y donar la mayor cantidad de aceite que podamos a los pacientes. Y como dije, influir en las leyes para poder lograr que las empresas que luego vayan a producir aceite puedan dar subsidio a cierto porcentaje de la producción que vayan a realizar, se dé un subsidio a los pacientes. Nosotros no vendemos aceite y creemos, y no solo creemos, sino sabemos que la información es poder y defendemos el derecho a intentar. Queremos que en cada doctor esté dentro de su saber el cannabis, ¿no? Que el cannabis es una medicina como las otras, pero más noble, y que se nos dé a nosotros, a los pacientes, esa opción. Entonces, en Cannabis Gotas de Esperanza somos, o nos decimos, salvaguardas del derecho a intentar. Buscamos hacer incidencia ahora que se está implementando la ley en que se dé de manera adecuada. Para nosotros que se dé de manera adecuada es que se cumpla esto que se ha firmado, que es no solo la importación del cannabis, sino también la producción nacional y la investigación. Y a la hora de hacer una producción nacional, que está, igual que va a haber importación, haya exportación, porque a la hora de haber exportación nos garantiza a nosotros los peruanos un buen producto, porque si tiene calidad de exportación, significa que nosotros vamos a recibir un muy buen producto y a un precio justo, barato, porque realmente hacer una cantidad a esa magnitud, a gran escala, encima es muy barato. Felizmente, porque tenemos unas condiciones muy buenas en el Perú, tanto por el clima, por el suelo, por suministro de agua, por capacidad agrícola, por muchísimas ventajas. Esta es una medicina buenísima. Bueno, todas esas cosas que yo les puedo decir, que no daña el tallo cerebral, que es muy inocua, que jamás nadie va a morir por consumir cannabis. Se los va a decir el doctor Dave, o sea que mejor esa parte yo no voy a meterme, pero que lo que queremos hacer son muchos seminarios para que la gente esté informada, para que no crean que soy yo la que salgo a decir esas cosas, sino para que haya gente como el Dr. Dave u otras personas que son químicos o biólogos o especialistas en el tema. Entonces vamos a estar trayendo y haciendo este tipo de seminarios para el público general, otros más especializados para doctores, para farmacéuticos, para distintos sectores. Pero nos importa mucho eso, la información, la investigación y bueno, la donación de aceites cuando se pueda, lleguemos a ese punto. Pero eso es lo que hacemos en Cannabis Gotas de Esperanza. Y bueno, nada, los dejo con el doctor MD y todos los Ds, David Hepburn.
Gracias. Yo aprendo español ahora. Y gracias por Francesca y por todos trabajo que she does. Y gracias por Lourdes. Lourdes es magnífica, mujer magnífica y aquí porque él es traductor excelente. Y gracias por todos, gente, por tus intereses en el topic hoy. That's about all the Spanish I'm going to do. So, but actually, I'm not quite finished my Spanish yet. But ¿quién de ustedes es médico? How many of you here are medical? ¿Quién de ustedes pacientes? Pacientes. ¿Quién? Sí, pacientes con familia. Sí. Sí. And how many are just looking for free samples? Libre siempre. I got my back pocket here. Okay. So, me llamo David. Let's put up our slides here. And what did we get it darker? Did we get it darker up here? Okay. Okay. All right. ¿Cuántos de usted tienes cannabis hora de la sangre? On su sangre. How many of you have cannabis right now in your bloodstream?
¿Sí? ¿Cuántos tienen cannabis en su sangre?
Unos, dos, tres. How many else? 3, 4, 4, 5. Excuse me. Oh, let me look at your eyes. Sí, sí. She says no. No otros. Sí. Oui. Sí, sí. So, no. Necesito por understand that everybody has cannabis in their bloodstream. We all make our own cannabis. That's why I do that, is to underscore the fact that we all have our natural endocannabinoid system. And that's the most important thing to understand to appreciate what we're trying to do with medical cannabis.
Y en realidad todos aquí, cada uno de ustedes tiene cannabis en la sangre porque cada uno de nosotros lo fabricamos. Esto es nuestro sistema endocannabinoide natural. Y esto es lo que tenemos que tener el día de hoy para poder ver sus beneficios médicos.
And it's so important to differentiate medical cannabis from this type of cannabis. These are the experts, right? These are the recreational experts. But no mismo de medicine, okay?
Y tenemos que aprender a diferenciar la diferencia entre el cannabis medicinal y estos expertos, ¿no? Del uso recreativo.
Okay, this is what we want. Porque medical cannabis, there is a huge global tipping point happening right now where people are learning more and more the medical benefits of cannabis, and what has got the world's attention is what it's been doing for children. The oils for cannabis for children. Start with that.
Y esto es lo que queremos. Cada vez estamos en un punto crítico a nivel mundial sobre los beneficios que nos trae el cannabis medicinal con respecto sobre todo a la aplicación con niños.
So, despite all of the stigma that has existed beforehand, and despite the negative sort of connotations that it's a Bob Marley hippie sort of thing, we now know this is a 400-page report from Washington, D.C., the National Academies of Sciences, Medicine, and Engineering, that was released yet last year, that pointed out conclusive and substantive evidence of the benefit of cannabis in many conditions. This is 400 pages. Last year,
Y el año
2017.
pasado, 2017 en enero, debemos darnos cuenta de que el estigma, esta cuestión relacionada a Bob Marley y a ser hippies ya está deteniéndose. Este documento de 400 páginas subraya y tiene hechos concluyentes y muy precisos sobre los beneficios que tiene el cannabis medicinal.
So it's muy importante that we avoid having too much extreme opinion one way or the other. There are many people that walk around and say, oh, it's the cure for everything. Other people say it's the devil's lettuce. But all of that hyperbole does nothing to help understand the potential and the promise and the possibilities that exist with medical cannabis.
Y debemos evitar las opiniones extremas de que esto es la cura para todo. Debemos evitar estas hipérboles porque eso no nos va a ayudar a entender los beneficios prometedores que puede tener que existen.
And so knowledge is power, and never has that been more true than when it comes to your health. And this is, today, I think it's important that for you to have the knowledge and to be a voice of common sense and reason in a world that's very, has polar opposite opinions.
Y el conocimiento es poder, sobre todo cuando es con respecto a nuestra salud. Y el día de hoy es importante que luego de esta comunicación ustedes sean la voz de la razón, la voz del sentido común para poder entenderlo de una mejor forma.
An example of the tipping point is, for example, this is in the United States. This is Sanjay Gupta. He is one of the most important physicians, key opinion leaders. And he wrote an article in Time magazine in 2009. It said, marijuana is not medicine. He then, a year later, apologized on television. And doctors are supposed to never apologize. But he apologized for 70 years of errors.
Y esta historia es del doctor Sanjay Gupta, que es un médico que de opinión, líder de opinión, y él escribió un artículo en el Times diciendo de que la marihuana, el cannabis, no era medicina. Luego de un año él tuvo que disculparse, cosa que los médicos no tenemos que hacer sobre este error de los últimos 70 años.
And again, underscore, here's the former Surgeon General of the United States, Jocelyn Elders, and she is now a strong advocate for the use of medical cannabis. One of the most popular doctors in America is Dr. Oz, who's a famous doctor from Oprah Winfrey Network, and he says it should be in every pharmacy in America.
Y la anterior era la ex cirujana del Estado, y esta mujer es una persona que tiene mucho interés en el cannabis medicinal, y también es el doctor Oz, que es muy famoso en Estados Unidos, que él dice que toda farmacia en Estados Unidos debería tener cannabis medicinal.
So it's very interesting to note that the reason cannabis is even controversial is because in 1937, a law was passed in the United States making cannabis dangerous and illegal.
Y esto es porque hasta 1937 en Estados Unidos se aprobó una ley donde se estipula los peligros y se prohíbe como ilegal el cannabis.
Which is why Dr. Gupta says we are 70 years behind and have been misled systematically. And here is the reason why. And it is very interesting. I'll try and be brief on this. But this car is made completely out of cannabis. Okay? Cannabis is a plant that has three major properties. It has medicinal benefits, it has nutritional benefits, the oils and the seeds, and it has industrial benefits from the fiber and the hemp. And it was the last one, it was the hemp that got it in trouble, not the other two.
Y la planta del cannabis tiene tres usos beneficiosos: el uso medicinal, el uso nutricional, que son las semillas y los aceites, y también la industria, el beneficio industrial, que es esta fibra. Entonces este carro está hecho enteramente de cannabis.
Here's another car made of cannabis, and here is also an airplane made completely of cannabis. And I'm not going to say how high that plane is going to get, but it's going to...
Este avión también está enteramente hecho de cannabis, y no les voy a decir cuán alto puede llegar.
But it's going to get up there. But what happened is that the hemp was such a useful industrial product that it threatened the livelihoods of many prominent industrialists in America. And it's hard to believe that we have been, as Gupta said, systematically misled. But the reason that it passed was because they had a very successful reefer madness campaign that was held in the 1930s. And it convinced people that marijuana, which was a new word, they had never used marijuana before. It was always cannabis before. But marijuana was the killer weed of Mexico.
Y este componente del cannabis, que es la fibra, amenazó mucho a la industria americana, y fue sistemáticamente guiada de una forma equivocada hasta que en alrededor de los 1930 hubo una referencia sobre, así, bastante loca por decirlo, de que se usaba el cannabis, pero se dijo de que la marihuana era la marihuana asesina de los mexicanos. Entonces, en 1937 se pasó la ley.
And so, to this day, that stigma exists with many people who are afraid of it because of this. And they are afraid of it because it was made illegal. But in 1937, when it was made illegal, there was one organization who stood up in Congress and objected, and that was the American Medical Association, because it was used before 1937 in 20% of medications.
Y en 1937 muchas personas tenían este estigma, tenían miedo por la cuestión ilegal del uso de la marihuana, pero hubo una organización que se enfrentó al Congreso y fue la Asociación Americana de Médicos, porque ellos reconocían los beneficios porque usaban hasta en un 20% la marihuana en medicamentos.
Un moment, photo, right? So, I say this because today I know one lady. She uses it on. We gave her some cream. She put it on her wrist that had been very sore for many, many years. She had tried different things. It upset her stomach, etc. And she had this cream sitting there for 1 month before she put it on. And then afterwards, I asked her, "How did it work?" She goes, "It worked fantastic. But I'm not going to use it because it's a bad drug."
Y tengo la experiencia, el testimonio de una mujer que tenía mucho dolor en su muñeca y se le aplicó una crema, pero después de un mes me dijo que los resultados eran fantásticos, pero que no lo seguiría usando porque es una droga mala.
So the stigma is strong, and you will know people who have that same fear, but hopefully today your knowledge will help people understand that amongst everything else, it is perhaps one of the safest products available for many people for many conditions.
Y hasta ahora hay algunas personas que tienen este estigma, pero ya tenemos el conocimiento de que este es un producto seguro que no solamente ayuda a muchas personas, sino que también ayuda a muchas enfermedades.
So, sometimes, as I say to people, it's important that you unlearn in order to learn. So unlearning the fears, unlearning the biases and stigmas, so that you open up your mind. Because many people have opinions that have been loosely formed, but firmly held. And they are not based on solid truth.
Y ahora tenemos que perder. Yo siempre digo que hay que desaprender para poder aprender. Tenemos que dejar de lado los miedos, las inclinaciones, los estigmas, tener una mente abierta para poder perder este miedo, porque hay ideas que se forman muy vagamente, pero que se mantienen firmemente en argumentos que no son sólidos.
So in 1988, a group of medical scientists in Israel discovered the receptors that are in our body for cannabis. 4 years later, they discovered 2 cannabis products that we all make. Every man, woman, and dog makes our own cannabinoids called anandamide and 2-AG. This is the endocannabinoid system, and I'm going to spend a couple of minutes on this, talking about this.
Y en 1988 un médico israelí descubrió los receptores y 4 años después se descubrieron 2 tipos de receptores que no solamente lo tienen los hombres y las mujeres, sino incluso también los animales como los perros. Y fue aquí que se descubrió el sistema endocannabinoide que nosotros mismos lo producimos, que son los receptores.
So don't be intimidated by this slide, but this is pretty important to understand what it does. This is a nerve, and this is a nerve. Okay, these are 2 nerves. And where two nerves come together, this is called a synapse. Okay, so it's a gap. So you have nerve impulse coming down here like this, and as it comes down here, it releases a neurotransmitter. And the neurotransmitter goes across the synapse, and it gets its receptor there, and then it makes the impulse continue down this nerve. So that's what happens. Now, what's important to know is that our cannabinoids, anandamide and 2-AG, are actually in the postsynaptic nerve. It's the only one. Everything else is over, all these other neurotransmitters are here. This could be, well, I'll give you a chance to catch up here. I'm getting excited.
Bueno, aquí podemos observar, estos son dos nervios y en el medio se realiza, en este espacio se realiza lo que se llama la sinopsis. El impulso nervioso viene desde arriba y hacia abajo, claro, y libera neurotransmisores que se conectan con los receptores del segundo nervio. Entonces, en el momento de que nuestro sistema endocannabinoide reacciona, se supone que va hacia arriba y es increíble porque los receptores de nuestro propio sistema endocannabinoide están en el nervio postsinéptico.
Gracias, Lourdes. You're doing great. So, es muy importante que cannabinoids es retrograde. It goes back here to the presynaptic, where it hits a receptor, its own receptor here. And what does it do? It shuts this down. It quiets it. It makes it quiet so there's no impulse. And that's important because in seizures, we have all kinds of these impulses coming down. We have to stop them. In pain, in anxiety, all these conditions, you have too much neurotransmitter release. And this, it senses it, it smells it, it can tell there's too much. And it goes and it quiets it down. It's a governor. It's like a dimmer switch. It modulates that impulse and balances it out.
Entonces lo increíble es que en el momento que nuestro sistema endocannabinoide libera, al otro lado, en el otro nervio también tenemos receptores. Entonces allí el impulso, como por ejemplo las crisis, el dolor, la ansiedad, la liberación de neurotransmisores se establece y es como un dimmer que lo puedes regular. Entonces ahí se produce la modulación y el balance.
So it's all about balancing our system. So this is important to understand that this is what we want to do because it doesn't always work correctly, especially if you have seizures or you have pain or anxiety or twitching, spasticity, all coming down fast. And these neurotransmitters can be any type. They can be what's called GABA or glutamate or epinephrine or serotonin or dopamine or acetylcholine. It can be any of them. And the purpose of our endocannabinoids is to say enough, bastante, shut it down, quiet. And that's what it does. It dampens, it quiets. This is why you hear about its work in seizures for everybody and in pain.
Y esto, nuestro sistema endocannabinoide no solo calma los diferentes neurotransmisores, como por ejemplo la serotonina, la epinefrina. Entonces, lo que hace es regularlos, los calma y es por eso que es tan beneficioso en cuanto se habla sobre crisis o convulsiones.
So, es mismo, but es a presynaptic nerve, postsynaptic nerve, synapse, and aquí es anandamide, our natural endocannabinoid, y 2-AG. Ese es el nombre de dos endocannabinoids. And over here, CB1, CB2 receptors, it quiets it down. Just es lo mismo en otra, just turning the picture around. So, nosotros, we have muy receptors in our body. These receptors are in our bone, in our gut, in our skin, on our liver, and in our brain and in our nerves. They're everywhere, and they're extremely dense in some areas of the body. These important areas where these receptors are very dense helps identify what conditions it helps to treat.
Y tenemos muchísimos receptores de endocannabinoides. Los tenemos en nuestros nervios, en nuestra piel, en nuestros huesos, en nuestro hígado, en nuestros intestinos. Entonces hay lugares, hay áreas en donde la concentración de estos receptores es muy densa y eso nos permite, es muy importante saber eso porque nos permite identificar qué enfermedades se pueden tratar.
And the whole purpose of this system is to bring us into balance when we get out of balance. So that, you know how if you go on a ship's cruise and you gain 10 kilos and you come off, what happens? Your weight comes down to here. Or if you get sick and you're throwing up and you get sick, you lose weight, when you're feeling better, it comes here. We have this balancing system in our body. That's just weight, but it does it for many other things besides that. It does it for our sugars, it does it for our temperature, it does it for our levels of tremor, for our pain, for anxiety, all of these things. The purpose of the endocannabinoid system is to bring us to a normal balance in a world where we are exposed to many, many things that change that balance.
Lo que hace este sistema endocannabinoide es ponernos un balance. Si salimos de balance, nos regresa el balance. Como por ejemplo, si nosotros vamos a un crucero y ganamos 10 kilos, en el momento que uno sale de ese crucero ya los empieza a perder nuevamente. Es igual como cuando uno está enfermo del estómago y vomita y pierde peso. Luego que uno ya se siente bien, el peso lo vuelve a ganar. Eso es lo que hace nuestro sistema endocannabinoide en nosotros. Nos regula el azúcar, la temperatura, los temblores, el dolor, la ansiedad. Y lo que hace es ponernos en un equilibrio, en un balance normal.
So, if I had to describe what it does, it helps us to eat, sleep, protect, forget, and relax. Also, not to have tremors, not to be throwing up all the time, not to be itching all the time, and not to be in pain, because we should be doing that. But the endocannabinoid system helps us eat, sleep, relax, protect, and forget. And forgetting is important, because you don't want to remember everything you ever see, especially if you have this condition here, PTSD, stress. Things cause you stress. You need to forget that. And this is what the endocannabinoid system is doing. I haven't spoken about cannabis plant yet. I'm just talking about our endocannabinoid system so far.
Y hasta ahora estamos hablando sobre nuestro sistema endocannabinoide. Lo que hace este sistema es que nos permite comer, dormir, protegernos, olvidar, relajarnos, evitar que estemos vomitando todo el tiempo o que nos estemos rascando o que sintamos dolor. Y es importante el hecho de poder olvidar, porque nadie quisiera recordar todo el tiempo todo lo que ve, y esto es muy importante, sobre todo cuando se trata de la enfermedad del trastorno de estrés postraumático, ¿no? Porque esto nos va a ayudar a poder olvidar todas las actividades que nos han causado estrés.
And here's something very, very important. All the places that the cannabinoid receptors are in the brain, they're in the hippocampus and amygdala and the prefrontal cortex and wherever else. One place they do not exist, and this is critical, is in the brain stem. And this is why cannabis, nobody dies of cannabis, because the brain stem is responsible for your breathing and your heart. So your heart functions. So no receptors here. Nobody dies of cannabis. But in America alone, more than 80 people die every day just from opiate use, including prescription opiate use.
Y en estas partes que tienen color pueden darse cuenta que allí, en esas partes de nuestro cerebro, tenemos los receptores. En la amígdala, en el hipocampo, en la corteza frontal, pero es muy importante darse cuenta que no lo tenemos en nuestro tallo encefálico. Y es muy importante por esta razón. Nadie muere de consumir cannabis porque no tenemos receptores. El tallo encefálico es el encargado de nuestra respiración y de nuestro corazón. Y en Estados Unidos, 80 personas mueren al día por prescripciones, por recetas médicas de opiáceos. Es porque en el tallo encefálico, como se ocupa de la respiración y del corazón, es que causa la muerte.
So there are many types of receptors as well. There's what's called the CB1 receptors, that's mostly in the brain, and CB2, which are mostly in the immune system. So they help decrease inflammation and conditions associated with immune issues. So it's just important to note we have many types of receptors for cannabis, and they're in many different areas.
Y aquí podemos observar que tenemos muchos receptores de cannabinoides. El CB1, que es con el sistema nervioso, y el CB2, que es con el sistema inmunológico, que ayuda a lo que es a desinflamar, a reducir la inflamación y el dolor.
Okay, so again, they're all over our body, and we need to know what's happening. Now, in many conditions in medicine, there is a problem in the functioning of the normal transmitters. For example, Parkinson's disease, Parkinson's, dopamine is not working very well. So dopamine is a deficiency. In some depressions, serotonin. In dementias, acetylcholine. In many other conditions, there is not adequate enough, or it's a dysfunctional system. And the same can happen in the endocannabinoid system. That dysfunction in the endocannabinoid system, maybe there's not enough receptors, or maybe there's not enough anandamide in 2-AG, or something's gone wrong. And that can lead to disease processes.
Y tenemos que hablar sobre las deficiencias de estos receptores. Por ejemplo, el Parkinson es causado por la deficiencia de dopamina, la depresión es causada por la deficiencia de serotonina y la demencia es causada por la deficiencia de siliconín. Entonces, esto significa que ese sistema no está adecuado, no está trabajando, no está siendo funcional, y eso es lo que sucede también cuando nuestro sistema endocannabinoide no funciona bien, debido a que no hay receptores como la andomina o la 2-AG.
And conditions like fibromyalgia, irritable bowel syndrome, some migraines are associated with a poorly functioning endocannabinoid system. And this is why cannabis has helped in so many cases with these people. In fact, the number one reason for prescribing cannabis in Canada is fibromyalgia.
Y enfermedades como la fibromialgia, el síndrome de intestino irritable, las migrañas, son enfermedades causadas por la deficiencia de nuestro sistema endocannabinoide. Y es por eso que en Canadá una de las enfermedades que recibe mayor atención con respuesta de cannabis medicinal es la fibromialgia.
So this is don't worry about that, that's the same as mismo. And this is down in the nucleus, so I'm not going to get into that. But it's very, the science is really remarkable. And again, all I've spoken about is the endocannabinoid system. Now, this is what we talked about so far, our natural one. There's also phytocannabinoids, or from plants, cannabinoids. And there's also synthetic cannabinoids. So pharmaceutical companies have created the THC and other cannabinoids to do the same thing. And they all act, endocannabinoids, phytocannabinoids, and synthetics, on the same receptor. So again, here's this nerve, presynaptic, here's the postsynaptic, and here's the release of our natural endocannabinoids, and they're going back here to this receptor. Well, look at this. The green, which is our plant, from the plant, goes to the very same receptors and does the exact same thing.
Y en la anterior hemos venido hablando sobre los endocannabinoides que se procesan, que se hacen en nuestro cuerpo. También están los fitocannabinoides, que son los de la planta, y también están los cannabinoides sintéticos, que son los que están hechos en las farmacéuticas. Y todos estos afectan a los receptores endocannabinoides que están en nuestro cerebro. Y aquí es el mismo gráfico que se vio anteriormente, y el verde son los que se producen por la planta y los amarillos son los que se producen personalmente, ¿no? por nuestro ser, y ambos van hacia el mismo receptor de endocannabinoides.
And that's the whole purpose of the plant cannabis, is to try and harness our natural system and make it work better. So, this is a cannabis plant. Don't pretend you haven't seen one. Most of you have, I'm sure, have seen one somewhere. But this is a cannabis plant, and I want to show you what is inside this. So as we move in bit by bit, we can see that there's this shiny white substances there. There's different colors because there are different types of cannabis with different compositions in it. And many of them have many different medical properties. Now, this is the, now we're getting to the interesting part. So these are called trichomes. And on the end of the trichome is called the glandular, that's another cannabis, are called the glandular trichomes. And this is where the medicine is made. These are little pharmaceutical factories. These are full of the cannabinoids that we use in medicine.
Y eso es lo que queremos hacer, aprovechar nuestros propios endocannabinoides y potenciarlos con los de la planta. Vamos a ir viendo, avanzando sobre las plantas. Estoy seguro que lo han podido ver una planta de marihuana anteriormente. Y aquí se puede observar los tricomas. Y los tricomas, estos son los tricomas glandulares, y es aquí exactamente en donde se produce los cannabinoides. Esto es una fábrica farmacéutica de la medicina.
And there it is again, and that is medicine right there. So this is important to know. Now, there are 140 different types of cannabinoids. Most people have heard of this one. THC, right? It's the one that the recreational users like because it gets psychoactive and gets them high, and after a certain dose. People also have heard of this one, CBD. It's the one that has no psychoactive properties, and you could drink a gallon of it, or you could drink a ton of it, and you wouldn't even know it, except it can be beneficial to you. In fact, this is what we use for children for seizures, is CBD-dominant medication. But there are 140, here's just 6 of them. There are 140 different ones. So knowing which ones to use for which condition is important for us. But it's why one size does not fit everyone. There are many, many varieties and types.
Y hay 140 tipos de cannabinoides. El más conocido es el THC, que tiene una sustancia psicoactiva, y eso es lo que usan los usuarios de la droga recreacional, que es este principio psicoactivo que te pone high. Entonces, nosotros conocemos 6, uno de los más populares también es el CBD, que es que se consume mucha cantidad, no se va a presentar el principio psicoactivo, pero sí va a ser beneficioso en niños, por ejemplo, para evitar las crisis o las convulsiones.
So, recreational, now here's an important myth. The myth is that THC is bad. No, 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 no. THC can be very, very useful medically. It is recreational, but that doesn't mean it can't be very beneficial, particularly when you combine it with CBD. And you put the two together, there is a very good combination effect called entourage effect. But myth number 1 is that THC is bad. It is not. Now, recreational cannabis is medical, but medical cannabis is not recreational, if that makes sense. In other words, let's say the medical was all this. We use CBD dominant. And do you think that somebody who wants to get high wants something with no psychoactive effect? No, of course not. Yet, this is what they want for recreation, and yet this is also an important ingredient in almost every one of the medical combinations that we have.
Y el primer mito es que el THC no es malo, es bueno y es muy, se puede usar muy bien en cuanto se mezcle o se combine con el CBD, que el CBD no tiene un principio psicoactivo. Entonces, lo que quiero llegar es que el THC se usa como recreacional, pero lo médico no va a ser usado como recreacional. A alguna persona que quisiera tener el principio psicoactivo de sentirse high, no va a usar el CBD, pero mientras se use el THC y el CBD en combinación, sí tiene un beneficioso medical, de forma médica.
Okay. And cannabis has no smell, it has no taste. What gives it the taste and smell are something called terpenes. Terpenes are everywhere in nature. There's 10,000 different types of them, and they are very specific to the cannabis plant. So if a cannabis plant, you remember the ones with the different colors? Okay, that's the terpenes that are giving it its different natures. And they themselves have very prominent medical effects when combined with cannabinoids.
Y la planta del cannabis no tiene olor ni sabor por sí propio. Son los terpenos, que son la imagen anterior, la que le da el olor, el tono, el color. Hay más de 10.000 de estas formas de terpeno y eso es lo que les da el efecto medicinal en combinación con otros.
And here are some terpenes in nature that are also in cannabis. So there's pinene and limonene and beta-caryophyllene and linalool and myrcene and humulene. So all of these combine to help the cannabis plant even be more anti-inflammatory or more sedating. So that if you had something like this, linalool, then, and you took the cannabis, it might help you sleep very well and relax. If you took the same cannabis, but it had primarily this in it, you would feel uplifted and stimulated like you had lemons. So again, the terpenes add to the medical character of the plant.
Y los terpenos, esta es una de las presentaciones de terpenos en la naturaleza. Mezclados con el cannabis, con un tipo de cannabis se puede dar un efecto de relajación, mezclados con otro se puede dar un efecto de estimulación. Entonces aquí es que el terpeno le da el carácter médico al cannabis.
So there's many ways to take cannabis, and this is called a vaporizer. We never, as doctors, say you should smoke it, never. But vaporizing is much safer. So smoking is 900 degrees centigrade at the tip, and it combusts everything, and you inhale that. Vaporizer is about 200 and something, and there's no combustion. It is the safest way to actually get cannabis into your lungs. Now, there are many conditions where it's better to take the oil, and many conditions where it's better to actually have inhalation. Like, you know, in asthma, you have a puffer, like okay, so there's ways here that inhalation delivery mechanism is good. Conditions like nausea and vomiting. If you're throwing up, you don't want to take anything in your mouth with a pill. Or migraine headaches, you want something to work quickly. So there's an example of vaporizing.
Y como doctor, no se recomienda fumar porque la combustión se da en la punta en 90 grados y luego en fumar. 900 y cuando es muy alto y cuando son en el vaporizador llega a 200 y pico y es la forma más segura de ingresar los cannabinoides a nuestros pulmones y en enfermedades se va a tener preferencia en el uso de aceites mientras que en otras en el uso de vaporizadores como los inhaladores para el asma. Si una persona está con náuseas, vomitando o tiene migrañas, va a querer un efecto inmediato y eso es lo que le da el vaporizador.
So again, I've had many, many patients over the years who have, you know, as a doctor, it's been very rewarding to see people come in and be skeptical, not want it because they've been bothered by the stigma. But someone has told them they should do this, or they come to me and I say, okay, well, let's try this. I'll tell you one quick story. I had a patient, she had a nerve condition that was quite bad called MS in Canada, multiple sclerosis. It's not a big problem in Peru. But she took the medicine and came back a month later. I said, how did it help with your pain? in your leg. She had terrible pain in her leg. She goes, my pain in my leg is so much better, but so is the pain in my stomach. I said, stomach? I didn't know you had pain in your stomach. Yes, the pills that she had been taking had actually caused her stomach to be sore. And she didn't have to take those pills anymore, and the pain in her stomach disappeared as well.
Y como médico es muy gratificante tener y atender a pacientes. Algunos de mis pacientes son escépticos debido al estigma, pero llegan a mi consultorio porque alguien les recomendó que hagan esto. Tengo una paciente, esto es una experiencia, que tiene multiesclerosis. Después de un mes me comentó que le estaba yendo muy bien con el dolor de la pierna, pero que también con el dolor del estómago. Y yo me pregunté, pero no sabía que te dolía el estómago. Y me dijo de que debido a las pastillas que ella tenía que tomar para el dolor de su enfermedad, le estaba causando un dolor en el estómago. Entonces, debido a que ella empezó con el cannabis, dejó de tomar las pastillas y mejoró el dolor de su estómago, tanto como el dolor de sus piernas.
So now there's the oils. The oils are extracted from the plant, and they're very, very popular in Canada. So for medicine, people would much rather have the oils for most conditions. And the oils are, in fact, they range. So that some oils may be what we call CBD dominant, and some may be THC dominant. So there's some conditions where you want something that's more THC dominant. There's some where you'd like a combination of both, and there's some where you want more CBD dominant. Okay? So these are oils, and this in Canada is, for example, these are oils. And patients get these oils and can take them for the medical condition that they want.
Y en Canadá los aceites son muy populares, en realidad se usan para muchas de las enfermedades y dependiendo de la enfermedad se van a querer que tengan aceites con CBD dominante o con una fórmula que tenga un THC de mayor dominación y así es como venden el cannabis en aceite en Canadá. Eso es lo que los pacientes reciben y lo pueden utilizar en forma de gotas.
Okay, and the oils can actually be now put in capsules. So now you're getting medication with proper dosing. And this looks like a pill. It is a pill. And, whoops, that doesn't look like a pill. This looks like a pill. And that is much, now you're getting into the world of getting the proper dose every time. Because sometimes when you inhale something, you don't know what dose you're necessarily getting, and dose is important. So again, there's the edibles. Now edibles are more, they're not really medical because they're not very consistent, so that if you take a bite of a muffin, you don't know what dose you're necessarily getting. So although it's a popular thing to do, people do benefit from it, it is not, from a physician point of view, that useful. Okay, we'll go back.
Y así, las gotas también se pueden consumir como en cápsulas. Esto es medicina en Canadá y esto tiene una dosis adecuada. Porque, por ejemplo, cuando se inhala o se consume en comestibles, la dosis no puede ser medida de una forma apropiada. Entonces, nosotros como médicos no la podemos recomendar de tal forma.
So now we'll talk about some of the conditions that it's useful for. So I've mentioned fibromyalgia is one of the best ones here. What you see here is, this is an American survey done by the National Pain Foundation in the United States. And they interviewed 1,600 people, and these are the most common medications that are prescribed for fibromyalgia. Look how well they work compared to cannabis in this survey. So this just goes to show you, and if you know the condition fibromyalgia, it's a condition of pain, insomnia, anxiety. And this is where cannabis works so well in the brain, which is why it's the number one reason that in Canada, probably pain is now ahead of it, but number one reason that it's prescribed.
Esta es una de las enfermedades que se receta, como les comenté anteriormente, cannabis, es la fibromialgia. La Fundación Nacional del Dolor hizo esta encuesta y estos son los 5 medicamentos que se recetan para la fibromialgia. Y como pueden observar, el cannabis es el que tiene mayor efecto y es por eso que es el número uno, bueno, quizás del dolor es ahora, pero es la medicina mayormente usada para tratar esta enfermedad.
Lourdes, you're amazing. Keep going. This is fantastic. You really are. And as a commentary, this is why big pharmaceutical companies are not necessarily happy about cannabis. This is, and I'll just give you another commentary, and which is probably the reason why in Peru, even though the law has been passed, they haven't done anything with the regulations, is because somebody's in there trying to stop things from progressing so that patients don't get it. And it's very frustrating for Peruvians when the rest of the world, including many South American countries, are getting it to the patients. They're not trying to battle in the get their little piece of the pie or something. I won't get into that any further, but to say that, yes, big pharmaceutical companies are not necessarily happy about the benefits of cannabis. We talk about pain. Yes, it is safer than most other medications for pain, and in fact, all of them. In fact, here is a study done in the United States where states that had adopted medical cannabis, not all of them in the US have, only 26 of the 50 have, but the states who did, look at the reduction in prescriptions per doctor of other conditions here. So that if you had seizures, they wrote 486 less pills than a state that did not have medical cannabis. But look at pain, it's ridiculous. Pain is, it saved a lot on pain medication in a country where opiate addiction is a huge problem.
Primero un comentario, esto es el hecho de que en el Perú no ha habido ningún avance en la legislación porque las grandes farmacéuticas pueden que no estén contentas por el uso del cannabis medicinal porque como pueden observar en esta imagen, este es un estudio que se realizó, cómo se observa, de los 26 estados que aprobaron el cannabis medicinal, esta es la reducción de las medicinas que se prescribieron para ciertas enfermedades. Para el dolor hubo una reducción de 1.826 en pastillas y, por ejemplo, para las crisis o convulsiones hubo una reducción de 486 en el uso de pastillas porque como se sabe, en Estados Unidos hay mucha adicción a los opiáceos.
So if I'm a pharmaceutical company, I don't like that. I don't like this at all. So you can understand that, yeah.
Tienen que entender que si yo soy una farmacéutica, una gran farmacéutica, no me va a gustar esto.
And again, here is America's top respected key opinion leader saying, every 19 minutes somebody dies. I shouldn't be laughing, that's terrible. But it doesn't happen with marijuana. Remember, cannabis is safe. And when we look at medications as doctors, we look for safety, efficacy, tolerability, and cost. Those are the four things we look for. And you can rest assured that it is the safest of anything we could prescribe a patient.
Este es otro mensaje del líder Sanjay Gupta, que dice, cada 19 minutos muere alguien por una sobredosis de alguna prescripción. Esto no sucede con la marihuana porque nosotros, los médicos, vemos esto, la seguridad, eficacia, tolerabilidad y costo de la medicina y podemos decir que el cannabis es una de las medicinas más seguras porque nadie muere del consumo de cannabis.
And here's another very popular condition it's used for in Canada. This is the Canadian Arthritis Society. And they actually have a pamphlet to give patients how to use it. So arthritis is a big one. She used to have arthritis. It's a side effect. And I see this, and it reminds me that when many, many years ago, when a doctor was telling me about it, he said he was trying to get me to put his mother on it. He lived in a long ways away. And I said to him, I was resistant. I didn't want to because I didn't know enough about it, and I was very conservative. And he said, if the worst thing about it, his mother had cancer, she was in her 80s, and she was in pain, and the pain wasn't being helped by anything. He said the only thing that helped her was cannabis. And I was still saying, well, I don't know this woman, I don't understand enough about it. He said, if the worst symptom is that she is sick with a smile, she is sick with a smile. Is that a bad thing?
Este es un panfleto, un producto, una guía de cómo acceder al cannabis medicinal de la Sociedad de Artritis en Canadá. Y esta es una mujer que sufre de artritis. Entonces, yo era muy conservador. Un amigo mío me comentó de que su madre, que tenía aproximadamente 80 años, tenía cáncer, tenía dolores incontrolables y solamente el cannabis le podía ayudar con la liberación de estos síntomas. Entonces él me dijo, ¿qué es el peor síntoma? ¿Que ella está enferma con una sonrisa? ¿Es eso acaso malo?
Anxiety. So one of the commonest reasons it's used for is anxiety. And again, now, I want to talk about THC for a minute. THC is one of the 140 different cannabinoids. We all know people who've taken THC and then they get very anxious and paranoid and they don't want to ever take it again. Yet, if you take it in a small dose, less than 5 milligrams, it is excellent for anxiety. If you take it in a higher dose, it makes anxiety worse. THC is very biphasic. If you take it in a small dose, it's very good for seizures or for pain. If you take it in a high dose, it makes pain worse. So THC is very biphasic, and the way you can use it better is by adding other medications like CBD, other cannabinoids, or terpenes, and you begin to combine these and you begin to see what is truly effective, what works. So it works very well for most anxieties.
Para la ansiedad es muy recomendable, por ejemplo, el THC es uno de los cannabinoides de los 140 que existen. Ahora, hay muchas personas que lo han probado y experimentan esta ansiedad, se ponen un poco paranoicos y no quieren volver a tomarla, pero en dosis pequeñas, como por ejemplo en 5 miligramos, tiene un efecto positivo para la ansiedad. El THC es un poco que tiene una doble cara. Si es bueno para el dolor en pequeñas dosis, pero si se consume en una alta dosis puede empeorar el dolor. Es por eso que se debe mezclar con CBD, que es otro cannabinoide, y otros terpenos para que tenga un efecto positivo.
Okay, I want you to all read this one now. This is of all the specialists who use cannabis, the most interested specialist is neurologists. They are the most interested because of this effect on the nerves. You know, I've showed you many times the nerve. Well, neurologists are the most interested. Rheumatologists are, pain specialists are, psychiatrists are, the list goes on, gastroenterologists, and so forth. But number one is neurology. Here's an example of many neurological conditions that cannabinoids, our natural cannabinoids, play a role in, and hence taking in the exogenous cannabinoids. So it could be everything from epilepsy to neurodegenerative conditions like Parkinson's and dementias and ALS and things like that.
De todos los especialistas en la medicina, los neurólogos son los más interesados porque, como hemos visto anteriormente, estos receptores se encuentran en los nervios. También están los reumatólogos, los especialistas del dolor, algunos psiquiatras y gastroenterólogos. Pero los neurólogos están especialmente interesados porque los cannabinoides de nuestro cuerpo, los naturales, tienen receptores que pueden ayudar para la epilepsia, para condiciones degenerativas como por ejemplo el Parkinson o la demencia.
So, a word about cancer. Now, as I said at the beginning, do not go around saying it cures cancer. People do that because they have seen cases where it has been very effective in cancer, and there's much research happening, muy research, whatever the word is. But there's a lot of MUIs going on there. So there is a lot of research in the world of cancer, and what it does at the very receptor level is very impressive and remarkable. I do 2-hour whole lectures on cancer and cannabis. But the first thing I say is, please don't say it cures cancer, because that just makes people go, it's another, magical cure from some magical plant, and so don't get into that. But it makes a big difference. First of all, when people are treated with cancer, the chemotherapy is very difficult for people. A lot of people throw up, they lose their hair, they become, they don't eat, anorexic, and they do not tolerate it. And one of the areas where cannabis is excellent is in helping people with the symptoms of chemotherapy. It's one of the best areas. One of the symptoms is vomiting and nausea, right? And that really helps with the vomiting and nausea. It is stronger than any other anti-nauseant medication. So very effective there. But here's where it's really exciting in cancer. Well, I'll let you catch up here, Lourdes.
Podemos observar aquí que es cannabis versus cáncer, no es que el cannabis cura el cáncer. Por favor, evitemos estas hipérboles y para evitar estos comentarios de que esta es una cura mágica que viene de una planta mágica. El cannabis va hacia los efectos secundarios de las personas que atraviesen por quimioterapia. La quimioterapia es muy agresiva, causa pérdida de cabello, vómitos, náuseas, las personas la pasan muy mal y el uso de cannabis lo que hace es aliviar estos síntomas de la quimioterapia, hacerlos tolerables para que las personas puedan sobrellevarlos. El cannabis es mucho más fuerte que cualquier medicina antináusea.
And just to give you a glimpse into this, this was a profound statement by the National Cancer Institute of the United States, of the NIH, National Institute of Health. They said on their website, cannabis has been shown to kill cancer cells. And furthermore, they said that studies have shown that cannabinoids can inhibit tumor growth, something called apoptosis. And what they've been shown to do is that they inhibit the tumor, but they leave the good cells alone. So non-cancer cells, they don't destroy, but they help destroy the cancer cells. That is called the holy grail in cancer treatment, because many cancer treatments are meant to just, destroy whatever it touches, right? And so it's called slash, burn, and poison we do, which is chemo, radiation, and surgery. And that is archaic, but it's what we've been using for years. The cannabinoids have got every cancer institute excited because now they can be highly selective and leave alone the good tissue while helping to destroy the cancerous ones.
Esta declaración apareció en junio del 2015 en el Instituto Nacional de Cáncer, que se prueba de que el cannabis mata las células cancerígenas. Asimismo, el Instituto Nacional de Cáncer declaró que el cannabis reduce el crecimiento de los tumores, mientras que protege las células normales, que se llama la apoptosis. Y esto es muy interesante, es el gran grial de la investigación, porque la quimioterapia es veneno, la radiación y las cirugías son procedimientos que hemos estado llevando a cabo por muchos años. Estos institutos están emocionados porque ya existe esta medicina que va a ayudar a conservar las células buenas y a matar con el tejido malo.
I'm going to give Lourdes an honorary medical degree after this is over because this is just amazing. Okay, and remember this, no matter what condition it is, I always say, take your condition and Google that. Say psoriasis and cancer, or irritable bowel system and cancer, or arthritis and cancer. But you see what this shows, that this is what I want you to remember. In most cases, you contact the Poison Control Center. You contact the Poison Control Center. Overdose of cannabis, you order a pizza. Okay? Again, that's how safe it is. Okay, thanks.
Quisiera recordarles de que para cualquier condición busquen en Google, pero lo más importante aquí es que si ustedes se contaminan, se intoxican con esas drogas, tienen que llamar al control de envenenamiento, pero si consumen cannabis, ordenen una pizza porque no les va a pasar nada. El cannabis no mata, es la única medicina que no mata.
Bueno, antes de que empecemos las preguntas, si es que alguien las tuviese, por favor, él pide que sean preguntas como generales, no como muy particulares o de dosificación, porque no, eso tendría que leer historias clínicas o algo muy particular, ¿no? Entonces, preguntas más bien general. Yo, antes de despedirme, que terminen las preguntas, quería agradecerles eso, que estén acá, que empiecen a investigar más, si es que no lo han hecho, que vean, hay un documental muy bueno que se llama The Scientist, para los que no lo hayan visto, de Rafael Mechalaum, dura 1 hora y ahí pueden ver un poco cómo empieza esta investigación, un poco más sobre todo lo que él ha estado contando, cómo es la historia un poco de la prohibición, que vean estudios que ya se están haciendo sobre lo que él ha estado hablando del cáncer que está haciendo Manuel Guzmán y la doctora Cristina Sánchez en España sobre las células en cáncer que se cometen suicidio, como él estaba contando. Hay muchísimos estudios ya, la doctora Paola Pinedo en Colombia, Mara Gordon, una película documental que ya va a salir pronto que se llama With the People, que es muy potente porque sí hay mucha evidencia científica. Lamentablemente a veces no se puede avanzar porque es todo un círculo vicioso, ¿no? Como hay mucha prohibición, pero hay muchos estudios y hay, y hay muchas cosas por ver e investigar, por eso les he dado estos nombres para, si por ahí les quedan, para que sigan informándose. Vamos a seguir haciendo esas charlas. Esperamos, el Colegio Médico esta vez no nos dio el auditorio grande, pero esperamos que la próxima vez tengamos un auditorio grande para que pueda hacer todo a la misma vez. Pero eso, vamos a seguir y también yendo a provincia, que es lo que nos gustaría para poder descentralizar un poco la información, pero seguir avanzando. Y a ver si alguien tiene una pregunta que quiera hacer.
Bueno, ante todo agradecerle al doctor David y justamente a la ponencia. Yo trabajo directamente mucho el área del cáncer, the breast cancer. Exactly. What is the complication, the use, the marijuana in the cancer? Is the interaction with the other drugs or no?
So if I understand you right, you're saying what are complications in using cannabis for a breast cancer or any cancer? For the other drugs. Very good question. So I would refer you to 2 studies at least. So if you Google cancer plus cannabis, that would be a good place to start. But what has been shown is there's a very aggressive cancer called glioblastoma multiforme, GBM of the brain. It's one of the worst. Studies have shown that what we use for that is a drug called temozolomide. And we now, studies out of Spain have shown that adding cannabis to temozolomide extended the life of the patient from 362 days from the time of diagnosis to 580 days every time. Which is a remarkable amount. And that the number of people who died from GBM without the cannabis in 1 year was 83%. When they added cannabis in 1 year, it was 51%. Those are significant numbers, so they're working on how it's going to help. So it actually potentiates the effect of the anti-cancer chemotherapies in some cases. And the same is true in radiation. A study out of England showed that cannabis made radiation much more effective for treatment of cancer than without that.
The different stage?
She has to translate.
Yeah, go ahead, let her translate.
Primero la pregunta era si hay alguna complicación con las drogas que se usa para el cáncer con el uso del cannabis medicinal. La respuesta. Es una pregunta muy interesante. Lo primero que hay que hacer es poner en Google cáncer y cannabis, eso sería lo principal. Hay 2 estudios que quisiera señalar. Uno con respecto a un cáncer muy agresivo, que es el BGM, que se prescribe una droga que es la tisomacinamida. Y el estudio en España demuestra de que las personas que usaron solamente este medicamento, esta droga, tienen 352 días adicionales. Si se le añade el cannabis medicinal, tienen hasta 580 días adicionales. Entonces, hay otro estudio también en UK, Gran Bretaña, que muestra cómo la radioterapia tiene un incremento beneficioso en cuanto se añade el uso de cannabis. Entonces, de un 83% de personas, en el siguiente año hubo una reducción de 51 personas que fallecieron gracias al uso del cannabis medicinal en la reducción.
But I have to point out that there's not enough research yet that has been done because it's been 70 years behind that we can definitively say, oh, you add this to that. So we don't have recipes that definitively tell you. But I can tell you right now that if I have cancer, I'm taking cannabis, no doubt in my mind at all, no matter what other therapy I take, because the risk-benefit ratio is very much in the benefit side by adding a cannabinoid. It's a plant. It comes from a seed. It grows in the ground. It has been shown to be beneficial. And the chemicals that we use in cancer treatment, the slash, burn, and poison, yes, it can be very cytotoxic and are not always, just to tolerate the therapy alone.
Y, sin embargo, no hay todavía suficiente investigación porque estamos atrasados 70 años en la investigación, pero si yo tuviera cáncer no dudaría en ningún momento de utilizar cannabis, más allá de cualquier tratamiento que esté llevando, porque el cannabis es una planta, es una semilla que nace en la tierra y es beneficiosa a comparación o en contradicción con las medicinas de estos tratamientos que son veneno y que solamente lo que tenemos que hacer es tolerar.
¿Sí? Okay.
¿En inglés?
Sure. Sure.
I have several questions.
Okay.
There was a page about the role in stress,
Yes.
and I was wondering if you could speak more about that.
Sure.
And
So,
then, wait, one more. And I wanted to know if there has a relation with labyrinthitis, vertigo.
what, sorry?
Vertigo,
Vertigo? Yeah.
yeah.
Mhm. Well, first of all, when it comes to stress, this is the interesting thing. I didn't get into that detail because we have what's called an HPA axis in our bodies, hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. And you've heard of cortisone? Okay, it's a stress hormone. We have a love-hate relationship with this hormone. It's good for us. It wakes us up in the morning. It's like our alarm clock. But it's also very bad if it's chronically being exposed to our body. And the nice thing about the endocannabinoid system is it determines how much cortisol is released. So in patients who have excessive amount of stress, they don't make enough of anandamide and 2-AG, their natural endocannabinoids, to control that cortisol. And cortisol goes wild. And people get very stressed, and they get very anxious, and they get sick. So this is where the addition of cannabis can help control the amount of cortisol and stress. But if there's no stress, the endocannabinoid system just goes to sleep. It only comes out when needed to keep something balanced. So if something gets out of balance, endocannabinoid system turns on. If everything is fine, it doesn't even come out. It's a demand system.
Con respecto al estrés, el cortisol es una hormona que es buena porque nos ayuda a levantarnos todos los días, pero si nuestro cuerpo se expone al cortisol de manera crónica, allí es donde el sistema endocannabinoide hace efecto. Ahí es cuando libera las hormonas, como por ejemplo la andomina, y es que controla el nivel de cortisol en nosotros. Entonces, si uno está muy estresado, el nivel de cortisol se dispara y nosotros nos estresamos, nos enfermamos. Y lo que hace nuestro sistema natural de endocannabinoides es regular el cortisol. Y si nosotros no estamos estresados, no tenemos ansiedad, nuestro sistema endocannabinoide no se alerta, es como si estuviera descansando, durmiendo. Entonces, solamente se liberan endocannabinoides cuando nuestro sistema se desbalancea y están allí para regularlo nuevamente.
Let me ask you this question, my turn. Do you think cannabis brings your blood pressure higher or lower? What do you think? Go ahead, ask how many higher.
Ahora me toca preguntarles a ustedes.
Okay.
¿Ustedes qué opinan de que el cannabis aumenta o decrece la presión arterial?
How many think it makes your blood pressure go up?
¿Cuántos creen que que aumenta la presión arterial?
How many think it brings your blood pressure down?
¿Cuántos creen que la baja?
Okay. Okay, here's the answer. And this was perhaps one of the main research in 2017 at the Research ICRS conference, is cannabis will bring your blood pressure down if your blood pressure has been increased by stress. Only by stress. Because it's getting out of balance. You see, it detects that there's the cortisol and BDNF and other stress-related hormones are out of whack, and so it will actually lower blood pressure that's been caused by excessive stress, which is fascinating. But that's how it works. It works based on a balancing system. So, and your second question was about vertigo. So vertigo there's central vertigo and there's peripheral vertigos. There's different types of vertigo. And I know of no research specifically dealing with either the peripheral or the central vertigos that I know of, because again, there's not been enough work done on it, but when there's nerve damage involved, there will be research.
There's, I don't know how it's called in English, but it's supposed to be bones in your ear, that they come out of your little bones that move from one side to another.
Not my ear. Must be a Spanish thing. Must be a Peruvian thing, because my bones are all in there nicely. No, I know. See, so, no, it's in small otoliths, which work in the cochlea and a lot of vertigo is because the otoliths, that's right, they irritate the nerves the wrong way. So where it's a nerve-related issue, you can anticipate there will be research, right? And the central vertigo is a more dangerous, different type of vertigo. Again, I won't get into the two different types, but to tell you that if nerves are involved, there will be research. There hasn't been any that I know of. It's a very, very good question because it's a very problematic issue for a lot of people.
Con respecto a la presión arterial, sí la baja, cannabis baja la presión arterial, solo si ha sido provocada por el nivel de estrés, porque el estrés se incrementó y el ritmo cardíaco se aceleró. Solamente en ese momento va a haber una aplicación de nuestro sistema endocannabinoide, porque este sistema está allí para balancear el nivel de cortisol, que es una de las hormonas que provoca el estrés y por ende la presión arterial, que se eleve la presión arterial. Es fascinante porque es un sistema que nos ayuda a regular, a tenernos en balance. Ahora, con respecto al vértigo, el vértigo, hay dos tipos de vértigo, el vértigo central y el vértigo periférico. No tengo conocimiento sobre las investigaciones específicas para cada uno de estos tipos de vértigos, pero solo si hay un daño en el nervio, allí sí puede haber una aplicación del cannabis medicinal. Sé que el vértigo central es mucho más peligroso, pero estoy seguro que deben haber investigaciones al respecto.
¿Qué tal? Buenas tardes. Quería saber si usted conoce el uso del cannabis en los espectro autistas.
See, so autism, sorry, I'm starting to learn the Spanish stuff. So yes, autism is an area of tremendous interest in cannabis. So pediatric neurologists throughout the globe are really focusing on some studies that have shown that it increases social contact, it decreases self-harm, it increases focus. And there are more and more studies coming out. And what's interesting, you remember I told you that there's 140 different types of cannabinoids. So for autism, I would tell you the same thing, and by now you should know how I'm going to say, Google autism plus cannabis, but add this, CBDV. CBDV is one of the 440 different cannabinoids, and it has been shown now to really, there's an exciting potential happening with autism. I can tell you many examples, but again, the research is very difficult when it comes to children, as you can imagine, because you have to say to a child, we're going to give you this medicine. Well, you have to go through a lot of ethics review boards before you can do that. But CBDV and autism.
As in Victor, right?
As in Victor.
Sí, el autismo es un área muy interesante relacionado al cannabis medicinal. Muchos pediatras, neurólogos pediatras, están alrededor del mundo, realizan actividades, estudios, porque se ha comprobado que aumenta la cohesión social, reduce la autolesión y también eleva la concentración. Entonces, cada vez hay más estudios. Es interesante porque de los 140 cannabinoides, para el autismo hay muchos ahora. Yo, como siempre les digo, pongan en Google cannabis, autismo más CBD-B, como en Victor, que es uno de los 140 tipos de cannabinoides, y ahí les va a mostrar información sobre todos los estudios, todo lo que se viene realizando en cuanto a el estudio de autismo y cannabis.
Yeah.
I want to know if medical cannabis is working in Alzheimer and how. Quiero saber si...
Yeah, if you could do it in Spanish for me, thank you. No. No, for everybody else. Go ahead.
Everyone,
Okay,
yes.
that's good. Thanks.
Quiero saber si el cannabis medicinal está funcionando en el Alzheimer y cómo.
Oui. Yes. See, it's the French coming out. I went to French like that. Darn it. All the time I go to French. Porque yo soy canadiense y Canadá es un país de dos languages, I know. So a very good question, and the answer is Alzheimer's and dementias are neurodegenerative conditions, and there is a neuroinflammatory issue involved here. There is tremendous research happening here now and tremendous interest because Alzheimer's and dementia has been associated with what's called beta amyloid plaques, which accumulate inside the nerve terminal, and also something called hyperphosphorylated tau, which is outside the nerve, extracellular. So, and the cannabinoids have now been shown. Right now, every one of you in this room is developing beta amyloid. So beta amyloid is something that we know accumulation, it's a smoking gun with Alzheimer's. You all are developing right this minute. In fact, I just heard you develop about 3 of them just now. No, but we're all developing these, and they accumulate. The question is not whether we accumulate them. The question is how we get rid of them, how we dispel the beta amyloid plaques from our proteins, from our neurons. And the answer is appearing that cannabis expedites or helps remove the beta amyloid from inside the nerve terminals. And there's something called Purkinje fibers. I won't get into all the details. I actually do another lecture on some of these neurodegenerative conditions. It's a complete separate lecture. But the answer is it's a very exciting area. This is why people ask me all the time, should I just be taking CBD as I get older as a preventative supplement, like a vitamin, like a vitamin? And the answer is probably going to be, we probably should be. I haven't determined that I can honestly, safely say it 100% right now. But I don't want to get dementia, or whatever it is you asked. Was it dementia? No. I don't want to get dementia. I don't want to, so I may well, that's one of the areas that I am researching. Excellent question.
Con respecto al Alzheimer y la demencia, que son condiciones de enfermedades neurodegenerativas, que se produce por una inflamación en los nervios. Hay mucha investigación, es un tema muy interesante porque dentro de las terminales nerviosas y afuera de las terminales nerviosas se acumulan beta-aminoide, que no es en este momento nosotros estamos generando esto, ¿sí? Cada tiempo que pasa lo generamos dentro de nuestro cuerpo, pero la pregunta es cómo nos deshacemos de este componente. Y se ha demostrado que el cannabis lo quita, lo expedita de los nervios. Entonces, la pregunta también podría ser, ¿deberíamos tomar el CBD como una vitamina, como mientras vamos envejeciendo, como algo preventivo? Y yo diría que deberíamos. No estoy un 100% seguro, pero para poder decirlo no estoy determinado, pero deberíamos. Yo no quiero tener demencia.
So CBD, not THC for Alzheimer's, why not combine?
Well, what's interesting is that the neuroinflammatory, anything that has to do with inflammation, I should have gotten this more. So inflammatory conditions are more CBD sensitive. CBD and beta-caryophyllene, which is a terpene. So there are areas where that is more predominant to be used. The research is involving both THC and CBD. But as a supplement, it would probably going to be that we'd be looking at a 20-to-1 ratio of CBD to THC. But that's not, that's just from my mangled, I can't remember. No, I'm just kidding. I just can't remember.
Yo quisiera saber, o sea, en pacientes con epilepsia que consuman el cannabis a dosis adecuadas, ¿en cuánto tiempo uno puede ver el resultado? Y también me gustaría saber si hay un horario exacto que puedan consumir el cannabis.
One question is regarding epilepsy and cannabis. How long will it take the doses for get results? That's the first question. And the other one is mandatory to have a fixed schedule, like a fixed schedule
Sí.
every morning.
So to find the sweet spot that works, is it for the baby? Okay, so to find that area that works for that baby, it's based on kilograms. So what I would like you to do is to email me, and I will give you what I recommend for childhood seizures and epilepsy. So it's based on, is that?
How long will it take the doses to get a result? For example, 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks? How long?
Yeah, again, it's a study of one. Sometimes it can be within a few days, like literally within 3 days, the seizures. I have one girl, I'll tell you this story. She's 4 years old, 200 seizures every day. She was on all the medications, all the anti-seizure medications, and it wasn't helping. Her father was the head of police in that area, and he put people in jail for marijuana. Anyway, that child is 0 now with CBD oil. 0 from 200. I will give you the website because it's a very interesting story. That's what Sanjay Gupta was impressed by, is the fact that he saw how it worked for children's seizures. So I want to give you reassurance that this is an area of great interest and success. But the name of this website is a very, very profound story. In fact, I'm giving a talk on that website. It's called KailasQuest.com. Yes. So it's called, can you hear?
It is a fixed schedule. It is like every morning.
Yes, it's a fixed schedule. KailasQuest.com. It is an excellent website to deal with the story of this girl with 200 seizures a day to 0. And neurologists, or pediatric neurologists, was amazed, and they are.
Con respecto a cuánto tiempo va a demorar, eso nuevamente es personal, puede tardar entre 3 días a más tiempo. Tengo un caso de una niña de 4 años que tenía 200 convulsiones al día y probó todas las clases de medicamentos hasta que, bueno, su padre era el jefe de policía de esa área, pero la niña llegó a tener 0 convulsiones usando ya el aceite de CBD. Les voy a dar la página web, es un caso muy interesante para que lo visiten. Y en este momento fue que Sanjay Gupta, el líder que vimos hace un momento, se asombró sobre cómo tenía un efecto positivo en las convulsiones de los niños. Y sí, a ver, tomen nota. Y sí necesito un horario fijo para darle el aceite. La dirección es K de kilo, Y de yoyo, L de Laura, A de avión, S de sapo, Q de queso, U de uva, E de Eduardo, S de Samuel, T de taza.com. ¿Cómo se llama? Sí. Otra vez, le repito. K de kilo, Y de yoyo, L de Laura, A de avión, S de sapo, Q de queso, U de uva, E de Eduardo, S de Samuel, T de taza y .com. ¿Sí? ¿Otra vez?
Cualquier cosa creo que mejor le escriben al correo, tienen su correo, le pueden preguntar. Si no le responde, como al toque no entren en pánico, siempre responde. Eso sí puedo dar fe. Pueden entrar a la web a www.gotasdeesperanza.com, todo junto. Si entran al lado derecho van a ver el fax. Perdón, me piden que haga. Pueden entrar a www.gotasdeesperanza.com. Si entran al lado derecho van a ver que dice fax con Q, por si acaso. Pues son preguntas frecuentes y ahí van a poder entender un poco más de las cosas que ha dicho ahorita, para que vayamos desterrando más los mitos con los que hemos crecido. Y ahí hay noticias, se va a ir obviamente llenando cada vez un poco más. Y ahí están una pregunta para mí, a ver.
Acá en Perú, de tu experiencia ahorita, ¿dónde se puede conseguir aceite que sea de los...
Por eso estamos luchando para que se implemente la ley, justamente para que puedan estar visibles para todo el público, ¿no? La calidad... Eso, exactamente. Yo no podría asegurar la calidad del aceite de alguien ahorita, no sé. Hay personas que lo están haciendo, hay terapeutas, podría darte el teléfono de algunos doctores que están trabajando con aceite y recetan aceite y ellos en todo caso podrían encargarse de eso, ¿no? Sí, pero sí hay medicina que se está haciendo aquí en Perú. Medicina buena. Siempre hay que tener cuidado, eso, ¿no? Que sea medicina bien hecha, limpia, pura, porque es para nosotros que tenemos un sistema inmune debilitado, lo que ingerimos es vital, literalmente. Por eso es la urgencia de la ley, por eso estamos aquí peleándola para que salga de una vez. Y bueno, nada, eso. Gracias por venir.